Hey guys, what's up? Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/eggs show. That's EGGSSHOW. Audible has more than 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or just about any device you can imagine. As Eggs listeners, you can download a free audiobook today by visiting audibletrial.com/eggs show.
Bang ding ding, trademark. He come out 6'7" tall. Bang ding ding, 1 star. Bang dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding. It is a perfect day.
Woke up to the sound of the garbage truck again. Upstairs neighbor's toilet's leaking on my head. Cars broke down, I missed the bus that runs at 10. I had a feeling this was a day to stay in bed. I finally left my pad right on the jumbo's cloud roof. A police officer pulled out his gun and said, I said, sir, you got the wrong guy. I guess it's just a perfect day. It's just a perfect day. No, 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 no,
Hey guys, welcome to another great episode of Eggs. Today we have a special guest, one that we've been trying to line up for a while. We've had some scheduling conflicts for a few times now, but we got her here. We have Christine Stenquist here. Christine is the founder and president of TRUCE, and TRUCE stands for Together for Responsible Use and Cannabis Education. Kind of hits home to me. I have a close friend that is suffering from a disease called trigeminal neuralgia. It's actually kind of hard to say, but it's something that you've battled with yourself, and you actually have a longer story, kind of an in-depth story that goes back to 1996. And can you kind of just give us a brief overview, or doesn't even have to be brief. Tell us your story.
Sure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for making the time.
Of course, yeah, welcome.
Yep. Back in 1996, like you prefaced, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor, an acoustic neuroma. It's a slow-growing tumor. It's a benign tumor. It rests on my equilibrium nerve, my facial nerve, and my hearing nerve. At the time, I was working at a hospital. I was walking specimens from the emergency room into the lab. I called out to a colleague. I managed to get his name out. I was experiencing pain that morning, and I wanted to go lay down in the overflow because we were kind of slow that morning. I said his name, and I then passed out. Woke up sort of in the emergency room with my colleagues now surrounding me, and started to go through a battery of tests to find out what just happened. During that CT scan, they found a small mass, and the radiologist didn't seem to think it was worth really noting or causing much alarm. They sort of dismissed the situation, told me to follow up with my physician. I brought that CT scan to my doctor, and I was concerned that this might have been the root of some of the problems I'd been experiencing. I'd been dealing with migraines since I was very young. At 7 was really my first major episode of a migraine headache.
Do you think it was related to that?
I thought it was. I mean, since then I've learned a lot more about my diagnoses and know where they all kind of venture to. But at the time, I didn't. And, I was 24 and I wanted to find out,
And you had 2 kids at the time, right?
I did. I had a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. And newly divorced at the time, and I had to try to figure out how to make things work. And this was, working at the hospital was something I really enjoyed. This kind of threw a curveball.
Were you an RN?
No, at the time I was a phlebotomist. I was actually going into nursing school. That was going to head into it that fall. That was my desire, my hope was to go into nursing. So this was sort of a foot in. So I worked at the hospital and was hoping to go to school in the evenings.
Sure.
So during the process of trying to figure out what this mass was, my doctor ordered an MRI and asked me to come in later on that day after. It was sort of an emergency, like, let's find out what's happening here.
Yeah.
I came in after hours, after he had seen all his patients, and that's when he told me that it was a tumor. And kind of without a beat, because at 24 you think you're invincible.
Right.
It's like,
You don't even think about stuff like that.
You don't. You truly don't. It wasn't in my 5-year plan. And so I was like, okay, so what are we going to do so I can get back to this? You know? So I really just said, okay, so what do we do? And I don't think I understood the weight of what he was really telling me. I'm sort of a go-getter. It's like, okay, let's problem solve this. Let's get through it.
Yeah.
Well, and for a young person to hear something like that and then try and, I guess, figure out what that really means globally, you know, because you're kind of in your own life and you're busy doing your things, and, you know, pretty difficult to hear something like that and immediately understand the gravity of it.
Yeah, and I just truly didn't. He told me, well, we got to do some more tests to figure out what kind of tumor this might be, and he sent me to specialists, and that was just really interesting. And that's when they discovered it was an acoustic neuroma. Because of where it was growing and how large it was pressing on my brainstem, or was starting to get close to, and so they felt like I needed to follow through with surgery. Because of the sensitivity of this surgery, they gave me a 50% chance of survival.
Wow.
And which is alarming, you know, especially when you're 24. And the mass wasn't really that large. It was really location. Yeah. It was location of it. And so I was instructed, I was given a month to get my affairs in order. I, you know, had to draw up a living will, had to figure out who in my family was going to raise my kids. That was an I that I just gave by. Do you guys know people in your family who want to raise your children?
Yeah, I don't know. Mine might end up on the streets.
You're better off this way, kiddo. No, but I joke, but it's a reality that you just don't think about.
Well, and it forces you to grow up quick. Like all of a sudden you're making decisions that are generally reserved for much older people, you know, and here you are at 24 trying to make those choices.
And I live in Utah, and my family, my parents live in Florida. I'm from Florida, though I have roots here in Utah. My family's from Utah. So I was far away from my immediate family. My siblings and everything lived far away. So I truly felt alone trying to figure out this healthcare crisis that I'm now faced with. So we did the paperwork. I christened a couple of my family members, God bless them, and said, if I don't survive this, you get my little Tasmanian devils, and went into surgery. And it was a really tough month. It was a really tough month to go through all of that. I have a religious background, LDS faith, and at the time I was non-practicing. I had drifted away from the faith for a few years, became even more pessimistic about life and reality and the justice of the universe if, you know, I was being taken away from my kids.
Right.
So a lot of anger for a good 4 weeks, but trying to get through what needed to be gotten through. The last night before surgery, I could not sleep, as you can imagine. I wasn't going to spend my last waking moments on this plane of existence sleeping.
Right.
So I was watching my baby sleep. I got very angry and was washing my walls. I don't know why, because heaven forbid somebody come into my house and it's a mess.
Well, yeah, I mean, just because you may not make it, you know, I mean, those walls have got to be clean. They're not going to clean themselves.
Exactly. I know. It doesn't make any sense at all. I think it was just nervous energy, not knowing what to do.
Yeah, what are you supposed to do in that moment? I mean, watch Jeopardy or something? Like,
exactly.
What is the thing?
What is it? It was about 3:00 in the morning. I had to be at the hospital like at some ungodly hour, 4 or 5 or something like that.
And you couldn't eat anything before.
Yeah, this might be it, and you can't let me sleep till 11.
Can I be in?
Well, sleeping's off the table.
So I finally kind of prayed and just said, you know, if I am supposed to go, take care of my babies. But if I'm able to stay, I'll be your tool. Whatever, whoever, if there's a God in that universe, just give me more time.
Right.
And so going into surgery had a lot of layers to it. I want to see my kids grow up. I want to experience all of that. The reality was hitting me. Went into surgery that morning, and during surgery, they got 40% of the tumor out, and they hit a blood vessel. And I hemorrhaged, and I slipped into a coma.
How long were you in a coma?
I was in there for 4 days. And when I awoke, tremendous amount of pain, as you can imagine.
Sure.
Deaf in my left ear, but I had stroked. And so I spoke very funny. I had a lot of slurred speech, nothing like you sound here today. I had paralysis and weakness on my left side from stroking, so I was in a walker. I had to learn how to walk again.
Did the hearing come back?
No, I'm permanently deaf in my left ear. But I was alive.
Yeah. That's a win.
That's a win.
Yeah.
I was alive and had really hairy legs. I went into the hospital, thinking I'm waking up, they told me it was a 3-4 hour surgery. I was in for 9 hours. And then 4 days later, I woke up. It was very disorienting.
Yeah,
Of course.
I mean, even though it was such a short period of time, when you hear these stories about people who kind of slip into those
for months
states,
or years
yeah,
or whatever.
and but it's very disorienting. Even that short amount of time,
well, and especially going in, you had one expectation, or you knew yourself a certain way, and then to come out and now your whole world has shifted.
Right.
Even if it's yes, I'm alive, that's great, but now I speak strangely. Now I am having trouble walking. Now I'm, all these new realities.
Right.
To just wake up and that's what you're faced with. It's kind of got to be. I mean, it's got to be a little bit alarming.
It is. It's really, really. I mean, you're sort of twofold. You're grateful.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're balancing
broken,
that, right?
And and you have wires everywhere, and just the pain. The pain was just so intense. I just could not. I mean, they cracked Humpty Dumpty open.
Yeah,
it was
of course.
really kind of because I looked the way I did, because I looked so broken. I refused to have my children come see me in the hospital. So I spent 9 days in the hospital, and for 9 days, my kids just didn't see me. And when I did get out, my 3-year-old, my son, was extremely excited to see me, hugging me and just sort of crawling all over me. My 5-year-old was taken back by the way I sounded.
Yeah.
Like,
You're
she
not.
was,
Yeah.
you're not,
Something's different.
something's wrong with mom.
Yeah.
And I get emotional about my daughter because she's turned into a caregiver at a very young age. It's really hard.
How old was she at the time?
She was 5.
That's
And something that we don't talk about very often is when a healthcare crisis hits a family, it has a rippling effect. It leaves its mark on all of us that are, helping that individual go through it. And it truly did, like I think I told you guys before we went on air, my family lives in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And I was here alone in Utah. I had extended family, but we weren't terribly close. So it was a real struggle trying to manage these emotions, being alone. I was single at the time, and having managed these children, and these are big issues. And when nobody really
even
prepares you.
just finding someone to watch the kids while you go in.
I mean, my boys are 8
Yeah.
and 12 now, but I mean, they, I remember what they were like when they were 3 and 5, and
Yep.
and that's a busy time for little kids.
It
And
is.
so to be mom, who they're reliant on, and then to have the struggles you're going through personally, and in addition to just trying to relearn kind of basics, get back to where you can walk without a walker.
Yeah.
Trying to manage kids has to have been horrendous.
It was really, well, I couldn't go back into the workforce, obviously. I was, and I didn't know how long it was going to be. I mean, when I started working at the hospital, I went into an entry-level position, working as a phlebotomist and stuff.
Do you have health care or anything like that? Or?
Through there, I did.
Yeah.
Let me tell you the story on that, because that's a story unto itself.
Yeah.
Because I was going through a divorce, I was able to apply for state assistance. So I went to school, got on state assistance, and was trying to become self-sufficient. During a 10-month span is when I got that job at the hospital. I quickly moved up in the hospital, became an assistant director of a department. During that time, I was transitioning off of state assistance into my employer's health care. So I was about to lose my Medicaid the next month. The month I was diagnosed, I was truly saved by Medicaid.
Wow.
Because my health insurance would not have been able to manage what I was needing. So I was really, really quite lucky. There are people that I advocate for now who aren't so lucky, that this cancer or a healthcare crisis has devastated the family financially. So I was really blessed in the fact that I did have state assistance at the time, and that carried through surgery and then continued.
I want to touch back on that a little bit later, because there's a story that kind of tugs on my heartstrings that I heard over the last year, Landon story. That's an it. Yeah. So we'll get back to that.
We'll get back to that one too. But so I can't even remember where I've left off.
So basically, we're home now. We're trying to get back on our feet, literally and figuratively.
Yep.
You are trying to do the role of mom and the role of taking care of yourself. I mean, just the self-care that's required. We don't have a lot of family or friends around, and so you're doing this largely by yourself.
I am. Well, and I'm pulling on, honestly, these services that are actually in the community that I had no idea about. Family Connection, there's a bunch of different services that you learn about through state assistance. I had to apply, I couldn't go back to work, so I had to apply for state assistance, for food stamps, for housing, and for other services, just so I could have childcare provided for, because I couldn't take care of myself all the time. There were days that I was down, weeks that I was down, that I had to have a sitter taking care of my kids.
When I heard your story at the Utah Can, I did the live stream for that. We talked about that before. You talked about missing seasons.
Yeah.
Like, can you expound on that? Because that just is mind-boggling. Just like waking up and all of a sudden it's spring.
Oh, it was. We were driving. It happens really often. I have memory issues because of the trauma done to the brain. But I'd be down for months at a time, just be bedridden and not be able to go. My husband would be taking me to a family event because I haven't seen family in months. And this one time I recall we were driving. It was the beginning of summer. And when we were going to this family event, leaves were falling. I had missed an entire summer. And it was devastating.
Is it the pain that was?
Pain.
Okay, so because the way I understand your story is basically the pain was so debilitating that's really what kept you from moving forward and being able to sort of embrace life. And so when you're saying that you're down, you were actually just laid up with the pain
with
and things
the pain,
like that, right?
And it's tremendous. I didn't know what was going on exactly. I just knew that I had brain surgery and I'm having all this head pain. So they're trying to comfort the pain while they chase down what's causing it. So now I'm starting to go through a list of diagnoses. So the first thing that they throw at me is I have complex migraines. That's what was going on. Then the other thing they added was occipital and trigeminal neuralgia.
Can you break that down a little bit, what it is? And
Sure. Trigeminal neuralgia is a nerve condition. It affects your V1, V2, and V3. That is the nerve that runs across the brow of the eyebrow, across the top of the eyebrow. Down the cheekbone is your V2 nerve, and down the jawline is your V3 nerve. And patients typically have a touching on one of those three branches.
Isn't it like your vein is pulsing on the nerve and it causes...
It can be a pinched nerve. It can be caused by a tumor. It can be caused by MS because you have a condition that's eating away at the myelin that's on the nerve endings. There's several reasons why it can be caused. The biggest thing that people need to understand is there's no cure.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no cure. And it is dubbed the suicide disease because people hit a point like I did for myself, where the pain is just too unbearable. It gets to a point where you really don't have any other alternative. At least you feel like you don't.
Right.
And I'd hit those moments many times throughout the 16 years that I was bedridden and housebound.
So, did you get TN from the tumor, or is it a side effect, or is it something that's hereditary? Because I know it's hereditary, and
it can be all of those things, and I kind of have a combination of stuff going on. So to pull apart which is the cause of it is really hard because there is a tumor there. But I was suffering from pain in those areas prior to surgery. So is it the surgery damage as well? It's in the same area.
Okay.
So it's just kind of a
lump
cluster
of it all.
of mess.
Right. Well, so then to sort of move the story along to where we are these days,
Yes.
basically we were in a lot of pain at the time, and so obviously I assume they were giving you a battery of painkillers, things like that.
Opioids.
And it might make sense to sort of, let's talk a little about that
jump
transition
forward.
from there into, basically the work we're doing now, and the reason that you're doing the work you're doing now.
So in 2012, I hit a pain wall, which was common while I was down. And the physicians wanted to put me into the hospital.
And the pain wall, is that just when the pain medication stops helping? Is that
correct.
what that means?
Yes.
Okay.
I was on a fentanyl patch, and I was getting Dilaudid for breakthrough pain and Percocet for daily breakthrough pain. So I was able to take up to like 4 Percocets a day or something like that to help with the pain. That wasn't helping.
Yeah, I was going to say, but that makes sense why you don't remember seasons.
Exactly.
I mean, that cocktail of
well, and that
pills.
was just the opiates.
Right.
That's not the antidepressants, the antispasmodics, the anticonvulsants, the
How many-
all the other
crazy.
pills they give you to fix this symptom
combat
or
the
another.
other stuff that came from the one.
It's a nightmare. Yeah. It's practicing medicine.
Yeah.
I don't want to poo-poo on doctors. They do their best with the tools that they're given.
Yeah. Well, and
we're
it's
all
hard
doing-
too. And I mean, this is obviously a huge topic that, you could spend days discussing, the way
The
that
minutia
doctors
of it all.
prescribe and things
For
like
sure.
that. It's just pretty incredible how we do that in this country. We really stack pills. And the idea is that, we take the pill that stops the pill that we're taking. And, it's like, it's such a weird thing. And, I think some of it comes from getting care from other doctors and they're not communicating. Like, there's clearly some broken systems in there.
There really, truly is. Even for me, I was told to go to a pain clinic to get pills from that doctor, go to the psychologist to get pills from that doctor, and then your family care physician. And I think that's a real mess.
Yeah.
That's a real problem
Yeah,
there.
it seems that there's a real disconnect in there because, I mean, obviously we're not in at least with the opioids, we're not as bad as like Florida used to be where you could just go down the street and go
it's
pharmacy
still
to pharmacy.
It's still
It's
pretty
still pretty bad.
Well, but
If
now
you-
they do it legally. Now it's just everybody's being prescribed, but they're getting it from one doctor, then the next doctor, then the other doctor. It's like...
Well, we're even having
such
an issue with that because they're now cracking down on pain patients. Like IHC has instructed their doctors to write 40% less pain prescriptions, which is problematic when you have a skilled pain physician who knows that patient and knows and is taking care of. You're practicing medicine as an insurance company, and that's not appropriate.
Right.
And I have a story that we lost a patient in January. He was told by his insurance company that he needed to come off of his pain meds. He was on a fentanyl patch just like I was. He attended one of our panels and was asking for guidance on how to come off because he had heard my story.
CBD.
He was being forced off. CBD doesn't always work for pain, especially when you're dealing with something as severe as trigeminal or nerve damage pain. You need more. And THC really is that winning ingredient.
The small microdose of it to open the receptors, right?
Well, it needs it just to work synergistically, but there are people who are in pain that need definitely a higher milligrams of THC than others. Bear in mind, there is an FDA-approved drug called
Marinol, yeah.
which is purely
Synthetic.
synthesized THC.
Yeah.
When I hit my pain wall, and I'll jump forward,
Yeah,
in
no, sorry to jump you around so
2012, I hit this pain wall, and I was really good at listening to my doctors. At this time, he had said, Christine, you're hitting a ceiling. If you keep this up, there's, death. That's a real concern we need to think about. And I knew I had to find other options. That's when I went to my physician and said I wanted to try medical cannabis. And he said, don't do anything legal. Let me send you to another pain clinic. They will start you on this
Fifth
medication.
one's the charm.
That's right. They sent me to another pain clinic, and that's when they started me on Marinol. At the time, I was in cyclical vomiting. I wasn't keeping foods down. The fentanyl patch was my only real pain relief, or the shots. You know, I was getting IV fluids. There was talk about putting a feeding tube in. You know, I just wasn't doing real well.
Yeah, definitely not thriving, and not exactly great quality of life.
Not at all. And started the Marinol, and for about 2 weeks, it seemed like I was getting some sort of relief or something. I was able to start keeping applesauce down a little bit. But it wasn't enough, and I had to discontinue because the side effects of this drug were just too much for me. But before I did, started Googling.
Yeah, as we do.
Yeah,
as we
right.
do, because that's what you do as a grown-up. And started reading patient stories who were saying, stay away from Marinol, use whole plant access. So this is a new terminology I didn't know, whole plant access. What does that mean? So that took me down into a rabbit hole of all kinds of links and articles.
Yeah.
I really started educating myself on the science of cannabis. Because if I was going to do it, I wanted to know what the heck is going on.
Sure. Well, and
here.
maybe there isn't a short answer, but like, why, if Marinol is essentially synthetic
they
THC,
found value in it, right?
how come you're getting like, what are the side effects of synthetic THC versus like, how come there's not? I
With
mean,
other- okay,
isn't that the thing? You're not really supposed to have much of a side effect with
Right.
standard
Well,
THC.
if you have a synthesized drug that's been standardized through FDA process and pharmaceutical and all this other stuff, you would think that you would have this. Some patients do fine on it. Some patients don't, just like with a lot of other medications. So I don't come after me, Big Pharma. Stay away. So in this situation, I was just another one of those pills that I couldn't take. I mean, I've been on for like 45 different types of medication. And so I've been through a laundry list of things that aren't working.
Well, and I mean, does it just boil down to synthetic isn't real? Like, I mean,
Let's say
they've still made it
that.
in a lab, and it's
Well,
still,
and that's the truth
maybe
of it.
molecularly it's the same, but maybe there's some intangible or something
Agreed.
in the plant that's
Agreed.
different.
Because in my research, what I learned was our bodies have an endocannabinoid system. It is a system that has receptors that are capable of bonding with the plant.
There's
phototypes.
CBD1 and CBD2, right?
And there's
The two-
more being discovered all the time, but those are the main two receptors, CB1 and CB2. There's more, like I said, research is happening all the time, weekly. There's stuff coming out on cannabis. But from those two receptors, we know that cannabis has cannabinoids that bond with those. THC works really well on our CB1 receptors
which
and
is
CB2.
the brain and nervous system,
Correct.
right?
Look at you, dude. I am so
He studied
impressed.
a little. He studied a little.
I am
He's
so
showing
impressed.
off.
You are showing off. I'm proud.
Trying.
Yes, and then CB2 is generally with the gut.
Okay.
Crohn's disease and IG patients really have success with CBD because CBD works well with
Digestion.
with the IG tract for whatever reason. But what we have learned in cannabis is that you do need that THC to ignite those receptors to receive. The thought, as of late, when THC started to, be demonized in 2014 with this whole CBD craze happening, people thought that was the only medicinal part of the plant, and that is not the fact. The fact is that this plant works synergistically with all the cannabinoids and compounds that are going on with it. That's why whole plant is favored over single molecules type of therapy.
Yeah, and so back to the difference between this and Marinol. Marinol may not capture all these things. This
Correct.
is how they've come up with something molecular match, but it's not.
It's not.
It doesn't have the same synergies as the natural plant.
Well, isn't it come down to like the terpenes?
Terpenes are extremely important too.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Because
it's not just terpenes though. I mean, you've got CBG and THCA. There's so much that's going on in there, and to pull out one molecule, one compound, one cannabinoid, say this is the king of them all is just not accurate.
Yeah, it's really the synergy that you're talking about.
Yeah,
it's all
and
these
you
things
can't-
working together.
You can't duplicate Mother Nature in the lab. And I know that the pharmaceutical
Yeah,
companies
God knows they're trying.
want
If they could
to.
pull it off, they would have.
Well, and they are, and it's in
well, a lot of it comes down to the federal regulations aren't allowing them to test.
Well, that's right. Like I was telling you guys earlier, we're dealing with a Schedule I substance in our country right now, and we can't do the research that we need to in a Schedule I.
So this is going to sidetrack us, and I'm sorry, but
It's okay. It's a long conversation. We'll get back to it.
Can you go back to 1937 and talk about the reefer?
Really old.
Yeah.
We want to go way back.
I want to go way back.
So, but no, I think it does probably bear a little repeating just in terms of sort of context. I mean, anybody that's listened to Joe Rogan or any of these other guys for the last 10 years have heard this story, but I think it's important to sort of frame the discussion so that people understand that, it's not that things were so bad before, but it was kind of manufactured and turned into this evil thing. And we've been fighting that ever since.
It's been demonized since.
I think we should go back further than 1937.
Okay,
then.
Wasn't it 37 though? Wasn't that the year?
That's
Reefer Madness campaign.
Yeah, that's definitely when the Marijuana Act. I'm just like so proud.
Yeah. Just pulling up articles, just researching.
Yeah.
1937, it was when the Marijuana Tax Act happened.
Okay.
That was Enslinger and all that stuff.
Yep.
But why I say go back further is it's important for your audience to understand that we, as a race, have been using cannabis for thousands of years. Thousands of years. And in the 1800s, it was part of our pharmacopoeia. It was in our medication.
Well, didn't they used to feed it to cows? And,
yes,
and we would get it from...
Well, there's two breeds of the same plant, or at least they're bred to do two different things. They're industrial hemp, and then there's the medicinal. So yes, industrial hemp was fed to cattle.
So we would get our
cannabis
from our milk,
our meats, or whatever. And not only that, again, it was in our medicine. So we were getting it through our coughs, lozenges, what have you.
Well, when they abolished it, they came up with a new term. It used to be called cannabis, and
Correct.
They came up with marijuana, which was the Mexican party drug or whatever.
Just a Mexican.
It was
weed.
it was to make it sound foreign.
Okay.
It was part of
It was part of the campaign to make it, because if they tried to go after it and make it Schedule 1 as cannabis, no one would agree to it because everyone
knew
that cannabis, they used it for...
was in our lexicon. It was
the new hemp, they knew all that
So
stuff.
they came up with a new term specifically to outlaw it.
Messaging. It's all about messaging. This is politicking. And we're seeing it happen today, that you see people in the media who are twisting and rebranding things to make it sound better.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things that I've heard about this whole sort of, reefer madness era was that basically they were appealing to people's sort of racial tension. They were appealing to, the deflowering of young ladies and all this other stuff. I mean, they're really trying to hit all the hot buttons to make people really turn on this. And from what I understand, most people sort of turned against cannabis because it was now at that point being called marijuana, but they didn't even know what they were voting against. They were just like, we don't want this horrible thing that's causing all these problems that you're saying are happening, so we'll vote against it. But they didn't even realize they were kind of like cutting off their own nose.
They didn't. And in fact, the AMA at the time, Dr. Woodward, was telling them, don't do this. This is dangerous that you guys are doing this. This is medicine. And it truly, we see it in our politics today, how emotions can take over. You start planting a seed that's something or someone else or another class is different, and you breed on that fear and you draw that contention and that frustration, and then you capitalize on it.
Yeah.
So it really happened for us. There was several industries that were coming online that saw cannabis as a threat, saw hemp as a threat.
Specifically paper
Hearst,
in that world, right?
Yes, Hearst, who was a paper mogul, he was part of this messaging venture. He used his papers to demonize.
I was going to say he was a newspaper owner and he owned the paper mills, right?
Yes.
So he had basically
yellow
the whole
journalism
thing
that's when the term came out. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but just slander. It's just it's your typical Inquirer. This is the birth of the Inquirer and
Google,
Daily Mail and
Google
all that
wasn't
garbage.
there to fact check. So.
Yeah, well, and
exactly.
and that's what's so unfortunate about the whole thing, and like all the chain reaction of horrible events, and the outlawing of all this stuff over all these years is that it was all based on kind of a false premise to begin with. It was just a business decision.
Exactly. Well, you see, when a politically motivated thing can take off with improper or not checked journalism. I think that's what is a takeaway there. And I don't know. I think we're kind of going through the same thing now. History just keeps repeating itself. It's just a different issue, different topic. But that's what we saw. We saw the demonization of cannabis because there are other industries and other motives. Government had a motive that prohibition was ending. They needed a new boogeyman and a new war. And this worked out perfectly because Rockefeller and Hearst and many others, Mellon, and there's so many names that are associated with that time frame and what was going on politically. You form a coalition when you want to make change in anything. And that's what they did. It was the prohibitionists, and they formed a coalition to squash cannabis. And so they did that in 1937. They created the Marijuana Tax Act. And in creating that act, you had to get a stamp from the government in order to grow or possess cannabis, but they weren't giving those stamps out to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
They shut it down. So Anslinger, from there in 1961, took this effort internationally. He took it to the UN, and we did the single convention, and cannabis became prohibited globally. In 1971 or 72, Nixon decided he announced the war on drugs. So you can see how systematically we have just moved that dial and have created a war that never should have existed.
Well, and it's all against our best interest, really.
Absolutely.
Which is the most insane part of the whole thing.
Well, it is. It is. I was having a conversation with a fellow advocate who's in Mexico, and she just got back from Geneva. They're talking with the WHO, the World Health Organization, about rescheduling cannabis. On the international level, it says Schedule 4, meaning it has no medicinal value at all. We are advocating and have been for the past couple of years to get it Scheduled 1 so that we can open it up to research, and we can open it up so the countries can be doing this in an open way. Israel has been doing research since the 60s, but they really have got the corner market. A few other countries, like Canada, has opened up the market. But we just don't have the research that people are wanting. They want it definitively. X, Y, and Z does this for this condition.
They want all the answers, but you're unable to get them because you're not being allowed to test.
Well, and there's 20,000 or more types of terpenes in a flower. So, I mean, to go and individually kind of select each one of those. Well, that's the thing, like you were saying earlier, new research is coming out all the time because now we're getting to do more and more testing than we've ever been able to. And, more data is coming in from around the world and other things like that. And so we're able to start making some real forward progress. But, I mean, here we are, 100 years later.
I know. It's really frustrating that it's taking so long. What we're seeing, though, it's patients that are creating the wave of change.
Yeah.
So the war on drugs happened in the 70s. At least it was announced. The 80s with the Just Say No campaign was kicking off. And I don't know how Jill are, but if you guys remember in the 80s, there was also another epidemic that was sweeping across our country and globally, and that was the AIDS. And so what was happening in the Castro is we were experiencing our LGBT community was having a major health crisis going on. We were having brothers and sisters on the streets sick, extremely sick. And that's where you saw your first medical dispensaries open up. They were giving...
In California,
In California, in the Castro. They were giving cannabis away to these AIDS patients. That's really sort of the birth of a true medical cannabis movement. And that was in California. So it's no surprise.
What was the lady's name that was doing that? There was...
it's
fine. I'll Google it.
You'll have to Google it. But there was an elderly woman who was making pot brownies.
Yeah, and she was handing
them out. And I don't remember her name. But there were so many voices in California. It'd be wrong of me not to like mention just broadly. There were so many advocates there that were pushing for this to really come online.
Well, and it's so interesting, right? You were saying earlier, history repeats itself. And with Prohibition, it was the same thing, right? I mean, it created a criminal counterculture, and then when it finally came around, it became very profitable for business and everything. Now with marijuana, you're seeing that too.
Created a global...
But it took the woman selling pot brownies or giving away pot brownies, and it took people rebelling against the system, just like these people in Prohibition were doing with their bathtub gins and their speakeasies. They were still... Nobody stopped drinking. They just had to get tricky about it. And so, and that seems to be what was sort of forced into, the medical marijuana scene, is they were forced to do this, but because a few risk takers went out and did stuff like that, they actually started the movement, maybe not even realizing what they're doing.
That might be a good segue back to my story.
Sure. Yeah. Sorry to derail us.
No. We'll bird walk whichever direction. So in 2012, I hit my pain wall, and I wanted to try cannabis. Did my research.
And your father-in-law.
So I had to make a phone call after Googling and reading and having conversations with my husband at the time. I called my daddy, and I said, "Dad, I want to try cannabis. I want to try marijuana. What do you think? And my dad raised me, and he's a Marine. He's an ex-Marine. He served in Vietnam, and he's a narcotics officer.
Yep.
You're waiting for that. Mike's like, tell him.
It's like, I know.
Just having this conversation with you is kind of hard for me because my entire family comes from law enforcement. I have an uncle who is
Same
a
faith,
judge.
same law enforcement.
I have people who are sergeants in police departments, and it's like the whole extended family is in law enforcement, and it's very similar kind of paths.
It's really hard too. I mean, for my dad, I mean, he knows I've been suffering for 16 years. You know, at that point, it was just a long time of, you know, he would go months without hearing from me just because I'd be down, you know, and he was like, just make a phone call, Chrissy. And he just didn't understand. With trigeminal neuralgia, even a brush on the face, even a wind, anything can trigger an attack. Talking too long can trigger an attack. Drinking something. The best way to describe trigeminal neuralgia for me and the way I experience it is like a permanent ice cream headache. It's the same nerve. It never goes away. It's just flared. And so it's a really distracting sort of condition to deal with.
Yeah, difficult to get much done when you're experiencing that.
Truly is. So for my dad to be so supportive, he knows that what I've suffered through, it meant a lot. He says, I think you should try it. I think you should look into it. At the same time, in Florida, there are stories in the news coming out with people who are expressing an interest in wanting to use medical cannabis. So it wasn't like he was totally blindsided by this conversation. It's happening throughout our states. So I told him, but, you know, Dad, I live in a state that's not legal. Utah's not legal. And I don't know what to do. And he's like, well, I'm sure you can find a bag of cannabis somewhere in Utah. I'm sure there's one bag somewhere. And this is the heartbreaking thing about this story and why I got involved in trying to push for change. The only person I knew to ask was my then 19-year-old daughter.
Oh, man.
I'm like, honey,
Question
I
for
know
you.
that I have said don't use drugs, but can you help Mom score back? Like, I really asked, you know, because at the time here in Utah, there was, I'm going to be using some puns, there was buzz about a substance called spice. And it was being dubbed.
I forgot about that.
Right?
Yeah.
It was being dubbed as legal weed. It was
Yeah.
legal cannabis. You could
That's
buy it in the smoke
sage
shops.
derivative, right? Or
Yeah.
something.
That is crap. It was chemicals sprayed on plant material. It was garbage. But I was asking my daughter, like, do you know somebody who can get me cannabis or marijuana, or I'm going to try this spice stuff that I can get at the thing because they say it's legal. Again, ignorance is not bliss in this situation. And she introduced me to her little teenager friend who's
Right.
19, who starts to give me the lowdown on stay away from that crap, and like she just starts telling me that's not real plant, and starts educating me.
It's amazing how much they know.
I know.
Isn't it crazy?
Go dare.
Right?
Yeah, right?
It did educate.
Yeah.
So she was teaching me about cannabis. She helped me score my first bag. She taught me how to smoke it out of a pipe. And she used to come and sit with me in my, because I was in my bedroom a lot. And then when I started to use cannabis, I was very concerned about my children in the home. And so I was putting a towel by the door.
So they wouldn't smell it. They
So I
would-
wouldn't sleep out or anything. And within 2 weeks of using cannabis, I started to get relief from my symptoms. I was starting to walk again on my own, using my cane. You know, I wasn't running marathons or anything.
Did you, sorry to cut you off, Mike, did you experience positive results from it, like almost right away, though?
Absolutely, within
I just wonder, because,
seconds.
if it was a couple weeks before you were
No.
really feeling it, like, I don't know if I would stick with it for 2 weeks.
I wouldn't have used it. I wasn't a smoker. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done that for 2 weeks if I didn't get instant
Okay.
relief.
Yeah,
so I
that's
should have
kinda
said
what
that.
I was asking, yeah.
The moment I had my first hit, because of my medical desire to be in nursing, I was documenting. I was writing down what I was doing. Like every time I took a hit, I would write down the nausea went
I think
away
that's
and stuff. So,
important.
for me, it was important for me to understand because I knew that this substance was going to alter my reality somehow. I didn't know quite how, but I knew it was going to alter my reality. So I wanted to document if I was actually feeling a difference or a change. It was important for me to see if it was happening. Within 2 weeks, I did see a significant change. It wasn't cannabis that brought all of this back. It eliminated some of my symptoms. It got my nausea under control, and I didn't realize it, but it was starting to help with my pain. So getting those two things under control, I was able to eat and sleep. Eating and sleeping is really important for patients. Like, so having that reprieve from a writhing body that's in pain. I mean, and I was writhing all the time. You know, it was like I was running a marathon. My muscles were so exhausted from the tremors and everything else that was going on with the pain. That's what really helped restore some of my quality of life. So I'm quick to tell people, listen, cannabis is not a panacea. It's not a cure-all for every patient. Some patients are going to get different measures of relief. For me, it was doing amazing things really quite quickly. Within 6 months of using cannabis daily, I was now driving again. Within 8 months, I decided enough was enough, and policy in my state had to change. I made my way to Capitol Hill, took a tour, started lobbying on the Hill on the cannabis issue.
Did you do that on your own, or did you have...
I did. I was still using my cane. I still had handicap parking at the time. You guys saw me. I walked in, no cane. And I was going up there in 2014. I met other lobbyists who were working on other issues. They were quick to answer questions. I just showed up. During the session. I had no idea what was going on. I saw on Facebook that there was, a tour happening, and that's how I showed up. What I was doing on Facebook, though, my son, my oldest boy, who was 19 or 20 at the time, he was teaching me how to use social media. I went down when the World Wide Web went up. In 96 is when I went down. I did not experience the internet.
You missed the MySpace days.
I missed it. I jumped right over that
missed
crap.
MySpace.
Right over it. I don't know if it was crap or not. I don't even know.
Well, it's not here anymore,
It's
so
not.
it was that good.
But he taught me about Facebook. He's like, you need to go in there and play some games, Mom. And then I'm like, he taught me how to play Farmville. Bought a bunch of cows. He taught me how to play on Facebook, but then he taught me how to socialize. That there are Facebook groups, and so I found trigeminal neuralgia groups. I found groups that were supportive of different issues, different political groups. I would go into those groups and I would search cannabis, weed, pot, any kind of reference to cannabis, and it would pull up all the conversations. If anybody ever mentioned that. And I would read their comments if anybody said anything intelligent about cannabis, like Mike has been doing. I private messaged them and I said, hey, I'm a brain tumor patient. I've been using cannabis for, at that time, it was like, 6 months, 8 months, a year. And I'm wanting to work on pushing legislation in Utah. Are you interested? Some people were like, yeah, I am. And I'd throw them in a Facebook group. So I kept building this tiny little Facebook group of people who were interested in medical cannabis. Started going out into the community. I called ACLU to see. I mean, this is an issue I thought ACLU would get. It's my civil rights to access a plant that is mitigating my symptoms and giving me a better quality of life. And they politely said, oh, yeah,
You can't
probably
go
not in
there.
Utah.
Yeah.
But your card's awfully nice. But she was great. She really counseled me and gave me an idea of the political landscape in Utah.
And that's really helpful, right? I mean, because it's good
Absolutely.
to understand what you're up against. I mean, because I think as an outsider, you get optimistic. It's working for me. Why wouldn't everyone do it? It's
Right.
difficult until you start to understand everyone's agendas and their,
And that's
just sort of what everybody else has got going. And we've been working on this for a long time. So who are you to come in and mess up our new agenda?
Exactly. And that's the thing that she was educating me on, is giving me an understanding. Well, one, ACLU doesn't have a lot of pull in a very super majority red state. So you're not going to get a lot there, but you should definitely go and build coalitions. You should reach out across the aisle and find people that have the same sort of ideology you do, or at least close to it, that they can help push and advocate. So that was a good suggested advice. She also told me, yeah, it's not going to happen here in Utah for a long time. And I said, all right. A month later, I called her back and I said, you will not believe this. There's this dude, Mark Madsen, Senator Madsen, and he is running a cannabis bill.
Wow.
I about fainted when I heard that rumor, and I begged for an audience with him.
What year was this?
This is 2015.
Okay.
So it was at the tail end of 2014. The CBD law just passed. I had reached out to those CBD moms, the epileptic moms. I don't know if you guys were paying attention to that. It was a CBD only bill, and said, hey, I'm a patient that needs all of it. THC is not recreational. We have an FDA-approved drug. It's not for recreational use. It's a drug that's used for patients. We need to keep pushing. This is just the beginning. And they sort of backed away and said, no, we've made some legislative promises. We can't really and we shouldn't really push or ask for more.
Well, wasn't the Utah the very first CBD only?
It was. I was trying desperately to stop that, but we were the first CBD only state. It fractured the movement by pitting one cannabinoid against another, which should have never been done. They're cousins. They like each other. They get together at family events. Come on. So it was really frustrating to see that happen. In the same breath, though, I understood politically what the legislators who were pushing that were trying to do. They were trying to normalize something that is amazing about cannabis and epilepsy. Epilepsy is not amazing. It's a tragic condition. But when you give a patient cannabis and they're going through a seizure, you can see instantly that there's a cause and effect. You can see that cannabis is literally helping that patient right then and there. And so for that point, I understood their drive to help normalize and start this conversation. If they can get people to be comfortable and warm with the fact that this one cannabinoid is doing this kind of miracle for this particular patient population, maybe there's more.
And that kind of fits into Doug Rice's story,
Absolutely.
Right? His daughter.
So Doug Rice sits on our board, but he also is the president of Epilepsy Association of Utah. I met him back in, I think it was 2015, maybe it was 16. He was looking for more. CBD was giving him control for his daughter's seizures. But when he traveled to Colorado,
the THC made all the difference.
It did. She had no seizures. And that for him was the epiphany, the moment he knew that he himself had to push for more. And
well,
we gravitated
his
towards
daughter
each other.
was having, what, like 15 to 20 seizures a day?
Yes.
And she's getting down to like one a week or...
It was, yeah, well, she has probably like 2 a day.
Okay.
Which is phenomenal considering. But when he has THC access, he has far better control of that.
Yeah.
And so that's why, of course, he's fighting. Not just for him, but that whole, what we've learned from CBD-only legislation and what we know about the science. I don't know if you guys know Dr. Sanjay Gupta or if you
I've
saw
met
the
her.
weed. He was quick to come out because it was the cannabis advocates that pushed back and said, you were teaching false propaganda to the community. CBD alone is just...
Didn't he like come out against it and then apologized a year later?
He had been against medical cannabis for years until he did the first weed documentary. He met Charlotte Figge, the Stanley
Charlotte's
Bell.
Web.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Charlotte's Web and Realm of Caring.
Yeah.
Some of you who follow cannabis know all those buzzwords
Yeah.
Mike and I are throwing at each other. But that was the birth of the CBD movement, was with Charlotte Figge, who is a child in Colorado. Her mother went out trying to find something to help with seizures. And this particular strain or cultivar that they were using was low in THC. So she thought this would be safe for her child, not getting high. And the side effect was it did help control her seizures. But even Charlotte needs THC. So through trial and error, so we don't want to cause anybody discomfort and say, oh, you're the bad guy because you're just pushing CBD. It does work for some patients, but there's a whole package that we need to keep in mind.
Yeah.
And so that's what we continue to push. That's why I met Madsen. I shared my story with him. He said, that is a fascinating story. Will you please come with me to the next meeting that I'm going to? So me and my girlfriend, who is also an advocate and a patient, she has Crohn's disease, we went into the next meeting knowing nothing about politics. You guys may know these organizations. We met the UMA, Utah Medical Association. We met Eagle Forum and the Sutherland Institute. I had no idea who these power players were in our state. They're just people. I shared my story like I shared with you guys today, and the experience that I had and why I was wanting to push for legislation. They kind of poo-pooed and grumbled with Mark about smoking. They didn't want smoking involved at all, which is ironic because that's really how I used it. That was I moved from smoking out of a pipe to a vaporizing machine pretty quickly because my lungs couldn't handle it. But that's how a lot of patients use it, just because it's cheap. So they were sort of poo-pooing on that, and I had to teach them that inhalation was really important and vaporizing was a really powerful tool for patients.
If you take like an edible, it takes about an hour and a half for it to metabolize through your system.
If you're lucky.
And if you can overdose and get really high and not like the effects.
Agreed.
And then if you vaporize it, the flash point or the temperature is a lower temperature, so it's not actually as bad for you as people think.
Right.
The actual.
Well, you also get to control your high. You're doing honestly, you're microdosing when you're smoking, because you hit a point where you're done. What I encourage with our organization is homeostasis, and that just means that you're eliminating your symptoms so that you are functional. So when we're talking about medicinal use, it's different than adult use. Adult use is going for a high, a stoned, relaxed feeling. Just like somebody who's going out to party has more than one beer, somebody who's using adult use has more than, that require tokes for symptom relief.
And I think that's honestly, and maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like from my perspective that's the biggest, or one of the biggest competitors of legalization and things like that, is sort
Alcohol.
of stoner culture.
Oh, stoner culture
And so,
can be
trying to
our worst.
overcome sort of that, because I
It is.
think, especially when you're trying to talk about it, maybe not as much now, like it's probably getting a little bit more normalized, but I have to imagine when you first started advocating for it, that you were still really fighting off kind of people who lived through Cheech and Chong.
Absolutely. I was.
And when you're going and telling people you're smoking, they're like, oh, okay, you're stoned. You're getting stoned. All right. Yeah, no, of course. You feel great. You're getting stoned.
Yeah, we want it in a pill form, because in our minds that is...
that is okay.
Yeah,
and
well,
if you
we
got
have developed a
script
set
for
and
it,
setting.
yeah.
And there's a set and setting around our medicine. We have sterile lab coats. We have, pressed pills, and everything's sterile. And that's how we've used medicine in our world. With cannabis use, it has been pushed to the subculture, so the set and setting has always been different. It's, little dungy grins, beads in the doorway, hippie,
Hacky
whatever,
sacks everywhere.
patchoulis, like
60s,
because that's where it was suppressed. For me, when I came online with this, I was reading on the weed blogs, and I was tired of seeing scantily clothed women in bikinis or with barely anything on. Great article, great content, but it wasn't appealing to me.
Yeah.
So for me, when I started my nonprofit, TRUCE, I wanted a landing site that would actually my grandmother could go to.
Right.
That my father wouldn't be embarrassed, because there are people who are
you
looking
wouldn't
for
go
that
to the
medicine.
site and see a bunch of bongs and
No,
a bunch
no.
of like the.
Right. There's there's a purpose and a place for all of that. There's just sort of two different worlds existing. There's an adult use world, and it has its place. I prefer, honestly, if we're being honest, I would rather an adult use cannabis than alcohol any day of the week.
Oh, it's so much safer.
Any day of the week.
So much safer.
I'm not going to demonize recrational or adult use.
I'm not going to go down. Well, okay, I'm going to go down this
Go
road.
down that hole. I'll follow you. I've got the flashlight.
My background, I'm a DJ. I've been a DJ for 20 years. I got into the club scene about 12 years into my career, and I got into alcoholism fairly quickly after that, because
It's what
free
you do.
tab,
You're in the bar.
Yeah,
you're
that's
drinking,
what you
you're
do.
having fun.
Yeah.
And I pretty much was borderline alcoholic. And I lived in Seattle, and right around the time that I was having issues with that, recreational came around. And I was able to treat myself, not knowing that I was treating myself with, like, I was able to wean myself off alcohol with marijuana. And since then, I've been able to kind of wean myself off of that as well. So essentially, it's kind of, it's been a stepping stone for me to kind of get that out of my life. And it's been amazing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what opened my eyes to the whole movement and the whole thing. And when I came down here and was offered the opportunity to do the live stream for Utah Can, I was like, yeah, I'll do it. I was kind of hesitant at first, because it's kind of like you're hanging your hat on that wall.
Yeah.
And then when I went to the convention and I listened to your story, and I listened to Doug Rice's story and Landon's story, and I listened to the doctors and the people who were professionals there, I'm like, this is bigger than just me wanting to get high. Because, for recreational purposes. This has a lot to do with everything, and not even just on the medical side of it, just the benefits of the hemp-based industry, renewable resources,
Yes.
what it can do for our whole economy. It is huge.
What it can do for the environment,
Yeah.
for our soil and our air.
Everything.
There's a lot. When you go back to, and you look at the 1937 Prohibition, and you look at what happened to our health when we started prohibiting cannabis as a dietary supplement, or even in our world, you see an uptake. Correlation, I'm not sure, but you see an uptake in disease states. You see MS becoming more prevalent in cancer and epilepsy, and all these disease states have gotten worse and worse and worse.
Well, and
worse.
I suppose, and maybe I'm just making an assumption, but it seems like, maybe people were treating those conditions with cannabis early on, and
didn't maybe
weren't
know
making
it.
a big deal of it. They were just getting it one way or another, or maybe it was being staved off because it was getting ingested through their food or whatever, and people managed. So when they didn't have that thing to manage anymore, and then we were trying to chase it with a prescription or whatever, it sort of, compounded and became a problem.
It's almost science has become our enemy in some ways. I think there needs to be a balance a little more, because we need it. We need the science, but we also need to bear in mind that there are some things that nature just does better.
Yeah, well,
our food is one of our best medicines.
Yeah, well, and like you said before, just when you could finally temper the pain enough that you could sleep and eat again, how much better things got, and so it's important, I think, to sort of look at things more holistically rather than just treating the one problem.
Balance in all things.
Right.
Always.
Right.
So, but it sort of occurs to me too, speaking of sort of balance. So, I mean, one of the big issues, when you were soliciting your daughter's help to try and track down some THC so that you could, give it a shot. I mean, I think it's really unfortunate, and I think it probably still goes on today, at least in states where it's not been legalized recreationally. But like, you kind of never know what you're getting, right? So
You
like
don't.
if you're buying black
still
market
don't.
off the street or something, like, I mean, whatever you were buying from whatever teenage kid was able to get you something, God knows what it was. Not to say that it was like laced with anything, but I mean, quality or the
There
type
was
or the
some dog
breed
hair
or the
in
whatever.
a few bags that I got.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's not like the finest quality
mold,
product.
what pesticides they were used, the entire
Process, yep, because I could tell the difference. Honestly, you use it long enough, you do become an expert in the cannabis. You know the difference between quality product, and that's what I was tired of. As a patient, I never knew what I was getting, but I could always tell that it was bad.
Yeah,
if
and
I was
and I think that's why I'm
coughing too
so
much.
amazed by these parents who are able to kind of work through and find a strain that's lower in THC, like in the case of Charlotte, something like that, where, now, at least in some states, in California, Colorado, places like that, you can go into a dispensary and you can kind of order, oh yeah, no, I want a little more THC or a little less, or, I want
well, you
something
can even
that's
ask them. You can tell them, hey, this is what I'm feeling.
But back
this
then, you couldn't do
don't.
that. And so it was a lot of trial and error. And, that's really unfortunate. People maybe didn't get the result they would have if they'd had the right product or the right. So I think that all this advocacy and just sort of shifting of mindset is really important.
It
because
is.
I mean, first of all, it needs to be more available. I mean, like you said, it's not going to work for everybody, but neither does Prozac. I
Right.
mean, nothing works for
or
everybody.
Aspen, or Tylenol, or
Yeah,
Advil.
I mean,
we have-
everybody's got their own biology and whatever, and will react a certain way. And so,
And that's the thing that's hard. This is specialized medicine. I can probably consume more cannabis than either one of you gentlemen. Well, one, I've been using it, but I'm using it for a different reason.
Yeah.
Than opposed to somebody who's using it for a recreational use. I guarantee you I have more micrograms of cannabis, THC, in my system than, say, you do. But if we were both to smoke a joint right now, I guarantee you I would drive better.
Yeah.
yeah.
Because I have the experience and my body's acclimated, and so we have to talk about this as a whole. What is impairment to, and there's so much to this
Well,
issue.
and that's the thing. I think, so many people, especially young people for generations have been, legalize it, but they don't really take the time to unwrap all these things.
There's a lot of things around it.
And it's unfortunate that it can't just be black and white, because honestly, just even from like the cartel position, like if just marijuana was legal in the U.S., then what's the cartel got to sell us? I guess high-powered things, but they stop in the weed game.
Yeah.
And things like that. Like, I mean, there's a lot of negative byproducts that come from the prohibition of that would be awesome if we could just kind of turn off,
Yeah.
just
Well,
overcome.
Even
But-
just the paranoia that comes with, now I got to buy it from some shady dude down the street, and
Yeah.
you wonder if you're going to get arrested. You wonder if you're going to get with, I for the first, I don't, I try to avoid it at when I'm in a state where it's illegal, like Utah, Idaho. I avoid it. If a friend has some, I'll take a hit because I like it. It helps me. But it's weird to come from Seattle where it's legal. You can go into a store and buy it like a...
It's everywhere. Well, and like I always...
And the thing is, for a patient like me, I travel. My brain tumor doesn't melt away when I cross a state line into a state that's not legal. And that's the frustration
Well, and that's
I'm
what's so
having.
terrifying, right? It's difficult to travel with. If you do get caught, then there's consequences. There's, and it's...
At this point,
it
I'm
makes it
being
really
bold as
difficult.
brass. I'm like, you know what? You want to take a brain tumor patient down because they're
So-
smoking
Well,
some
and I
plant
think
material?
just, the movement as a whole has made so much progress in the last
have.
even 10 years,
We absolutely have.
that I think by and large it's getting normalized among law enforcement and everybody else. I mean, I think really they're looking for problem people, people who are, have pounds and pounds in their trunk or something, I think are what they're looking after more than
And the
anything.
only reason why those people exist is because we have such patchwork of policy in all these states. We have 47 states that have some form of medical cannabis legislation. We have 9 states that have adult use. We have 17 states that have CBD only. Every single state is different.
Yeah.
That is a mess that needs to be taken care of.
I guess while we're here, let's stay here for a second.
Okay.
Prop 2. It passed last time that I saw you and you were talking at the Utah Can Convention. Prop 2 was getting voted on right then.
Okay, and Prop 2 for people not in Utah listening, that was the recreational or the medicinal
it was the Medical
legalization.
Cannabis Act.
So
Yep.
talk about what happened 4 days before Prop 2 was voted on. And actually, let's talk about how Prop 2 came to be, because it was fought and fought and fought, and then you got signatures for it.
Yep.
So it was introduced into legislation because of that, and then 4 days before that, what happened?
So we tried in 2015 to pass legislation with Madsen. It failed 16. It failed again. That's when I made the announcement during the session that we were going to go for a ballot initiative. 2017 happened. More legislators were just doing messaging bills. So we took Senator Madsen's bill that was in 2016, tweaked it a little bit, and created language for Proposition 2. Proposition 2 came about because the people in this state were tired of being ignored by our elected officials on this issue. And we went into this thinking, we were going to get somewhere, and once it passed, we could start kind of morphing it, because no piece of legislation stays perfect and intact. But you go in and try to make minor tweaks and improve on it as we go. So last year, towards the end of the year in October, in September, there was rumors about backroom deals being had. I was told that my ally had entered into talks with the prohibitionists on doing a compromise bill. And I was very upset about this. We had registered 78,000 new voters. There had been a mass grassroots effort in trying to get the initiative on the ballot to qualify in the first place. We went through all kinds of antics with the opposition, doing lies on TV and radio. We had to get those ads pulled. The advocates, reached out to those stations. Every time that they were doing dishonest deeds, we were trying to stop them. So it was a real effort to get qualified. We're in what we call a weak ballot state, just meaning that even if a ballot passes, it doesn't have a whole lot of teeth. The legislative body can come in behind and do whatever they want. We knew that going in, but we felt like it was something that we could actually start working with. In October, there was an announcement that there was going to be a press conference, and there was a compromise. So October 4th, we went in. That was 1 month before Election Day, and they did a whole press conference in the Gold Room with my ally who had jumped ship and was now in cahoots. Colluded with the opposition, and they started conversations in language on a replace and repeal bill. So that month before the election was a month of hell. We were fighting to keep people focused on what was really going on. The opposition was now running ads telling people that bill was a recreational bill. It was going to open up the door for all kinds of problems, and they were just lies and propaganda. But because our our allies entered into agreement. They said that they wouldn't be running any ads during that time, and so we couldn't push back. We couldn't push back because of the compromise deal that they went in. So all we could do as grassroots advocates, what I did is I filed for a PIC so that I could start being a little more politically active. A PIC is a political issue committee. That's what a ballot initiative is. It's a political issue committee that comes together that runs a single issue. So I started a PIC, and we started to kind of yell back and push back, send out email blasts, trying to educate people on really what's happening, because we needed that vote. We needed that vote to pass. I was really concerned that we'd get through this, and because of some powerful stakeholders in the state coming out against the Prop 2, we were going to fail. And I don't think the legislative body was going to give us what we needed. So it was a real fight that last month before the election day. I'm not sure I know the reference of the 4 days before election. I think it was 4 weeks before election.
Oh,
was when
okay.
it was.
I must have heard wrong. I thought it was 4 days before that they came out and said, okay, yeah, go ahead and vote for this because we have this compromise that's going to take care of all the problems.
For 4 weeks, they pounded, talking out of both sides of their mouths, vote for Prop 2, but we've got a compromise.
Yeah.
And a special session is coming.
Yeah,
so
and see, I think as like a Utah voter, this is the most frustrating thing. And like you said, that it's by design, our Congress is this way, which is ridiculous. But I mean, what's the point of having a majority rule if they can just change it anyway?
That was my
especially
frustration.
Given, and I don't want to. Corruption's probably too strong, but I mean
we can use that strong word.
But basically, for people outside of Utah, I mean, everybody close your eyes for a second and imagine whatever stereotypes you have about what you would think government in Utah might be dictated by, and then
Are we not allowed to say it?
No, we can,
Okay.
but for people who aren't from Utah.
Okay,
And
go
so,
ahead.
but we're largely run by the LDS Church, which will be the
Agreed.
stereotype that everyone nationwide will know.
Right.
And as a result, even though it's not probably maybe it is by design, but we're definitely being legislated to by a large class that
heavily.
have sort of a religious stake in this thing.
Yep.
And they're not doing enough to pay attention to the voices of other people.
Yeah.
And on whatever premise or background or whatever they think they know best is for other people.
We saw the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints come out pretty heavily against Prop 2. They really threw their weight. They sent down emails to every single member in Utah telling them to vote no on Prop 2. Their lobbyist at the pulpit in his church was telling people to say no to
And
Prop
this is
2.
one of the things
they
that
were
I just
organizing
can't.
within the church. Bishops were contacting Relief Society presidents. I'm sorry, some people
No.
don't know what this terminology is. But the auxiliary
church management.
was putting pressure on their members to get signatures pulled off of our efforts based on lies. That was my biggest problem with this. I remember texting the church lobbyist, Marty Stevens. I text him and
Shout
said,
out.
how could you sit there and lie to your multitude? How can you do it?
Yeah.
Never replied, and that's fine, but I guarantee you he read it. That was my frustration with this whole thing.
Yeah, and it's frustrating. I mean, it makes it difficult to, in a system where you're supposed to be living with sort of, due process and equal rights and your ability to bring something to Congress and work it through legislative paths.
Well,
and,
even
I mean,
more...
to be shut down by what is supposed to
Even
be an
more than
independent
that,
body.
if I may, in my group, I have LDS members that were
course.
fighting with us side by side to watch my friends.
I think a lot of
the
it.
devastation to watch a religion step in and tell somebody they can or cannot have this type of health care. They had to flip the switch.
Yeah.
They couldn't keep saying that it was bad for you. So you saw halfway through the campaign, they said, oh, we support medical cannabis, just not this legislation. This is
Right.
recreational. They had to spin it because at this point in time, we had so many members pushing back saying, it is not recreational. This is not what's going on. We had extremely devout and strong advocates that are LDS members. And so
Well,
this
and it
was
makes sense, right? I
hard.
mean, you saw sort of similar behavior around Prop 9, which was the gay marriage bill in California.
Prop 8.
Or Prop 8, excuse me. And, I mean, there's whole documentaries written about the church's
Absolutely.
involvement in Prop 8. And
To be honest with you, that's part of the reason I left the church.
well, it just
was that.
it seems. I mean, I honestly don't even know how it exists. Like, I mean, I'm sure that in other parts of the country, maybe it's other churches and things. Whoever's the
you
predominant
don't see
body,
a
but-
theocracy type government
but
like
it
you
is-
see here in Utah.
yeah,
You just
it's-
don't.
it's
People
really
want to
overwhelming.
say that it's in Pittsburgh or in Philadelphia. Hughes is quick to tell me, oh, this happens in other places. No, not
Yeah.
like it does here. Maybe the Vatican.
Yeah.
We could probably go that far.
Yeah. Well,
But-
I guess, I guess we're kind of like the Vatican. They have their own state. But,
No, we're part of the United States.
right.
And that's the frustration that a lot of us who are no longer practicing LDS or were never practicing LDS to have a faith-based organization
Yeah.
run our state is alarming.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's the worst kept secret. We all know that's happening.
yeah.
Well, you want to know exactly how it happens. Look at a high school and look across the street or even next door.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I talk about this all the time. I have family that work in the school
Seminaries.
systems and stuff, and I'm like, so where's the Buddhist seminary? Where's the
Exactly.
Muslim seminary?
Where's the
whatever
separation
seminary?
between church and state?
There
it doesn't
isn't, and
exist
we-
here,
and
it's,
the thing is-
super frustrating.
It is.
Well, it's
And
funny
coming
'cause-
from the church and going through the seminary system, I used to have to in Seattle. I had to get up at 5 in the morning
Me
every
too. I lived
morning,
in Arkansas,
and then
same.
I would go to
That's
seminary
devotion.
before at the church. And then I would go from there, and I would go
Yeah.
to school. These
Well, and
people
it's
can
funny-
actually get out of a
School.
semester or a
Class
class
period, yeah, and walk
period,
over.
and walk over and take a
Well,
class.
and it's so funny, right? Because they wouldn't sell that dirt to anyone else. Like, because it has to be separate. It can't be school property. And so
Right.
it's separate, but they wouldn't sell it to In-N-Out Burger. They wouldn't sell it to anybody else.
Which would be practical.
Yeah, right. I mean, put a little
only have
7-Eleven
30
right there or
minutes for
something.
lunch.
I mean, it'd be awesome. I mean, what convenience store chain wouldn't love that little block of dirt next to the school?
Mm-hmm.
But they do it for that church, and I don't think that they would do that for any other church. And I mean, it is kind of a weird double standard, and it's hard when that's the leadership, you know. And so and I think largely, I mean, growing up in Idaho and Utah, I mean, a huge swath of our friends and family are
course.
LDS, and it just is what it is. And
Yeah.
I mean, I know in my experience with LDS people is that, I mean, they're largely normal people. Everybody is cool. And so like you're saying,
Yeah.
they're like, I mean, you're having members who are experiencing these things and they're cheating their own church, right?
Yeah.
And so they're having the pressures of how they're supposed to behave as a good Mormon kid. Oh, wait, I don't think we're supposed to call them Mormons anymore. They have new rules on
I
this.
know.
But I mean, but the point anyway is that your own church is sort of stigmatizing you and what you need to try and, take care of, whether it's medicinal marijuana or if you're homosexual or if if you're LGBT or whatever, I mean, they're pitting their church against their membership.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's such a weird thing.
I left the church a year before all of this when we were running up. We had filed the ballot initiative, and I was really concerned about how this fight was going to start panning out, and I wasn't going to be disciplined. So I left.
I was.
Were you disciplined?
Yeah, it
I'm
was.
sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't give them the satisfaction because I said, you know what, boys, I'm out. I didn't want to be part of those numbers.
Yeah.
It's really frustrating living here
I
and
think
watching.
I'm still on the record.
Yeah.
yeah?
I never
Well, I was-
wrote
I
the
was
letter.
just-
I'll send
Yeah.
you a website.
I was just blessed LDS, and I'm on the rolls, so I'm not even sure how their roster really is
So-
in terms of accuracy.
Yeah.
Let's kind of
Head back.
jump back.
Let's veer too far.
Yeah. So Prop 2
So
and
Prop 2
the
passed.
quote unquote
Let's
compromise.
be happy for a
Okay.
moment, though, because I think this Prop 2 passed. And that is historic, and it's amazing. Not just Prop 2, but Prop 3 and Prop 4 passed.
I don't know about Prop 3 or Prop
3
4.
is Medicaid expansion, and Prop 4 is gerrymandering, is better boundaries.
Oh, I love it.
So
I love it.
it really was the people pushing back, saying, we have had enough
Well,
of
and
politicking happening to us. We are happening to
Well,
it.
and I think right there is the point too. I mean, we're griping about some of the realities of sort of church-driven government around here, but the fact of the matter is, church or not church, the public spoke up, and they came out and they really voted
Absolutely.
for these things, and they approved these things. And I don't remember the margin. What was the margin on Prop 2? It was, I mean, significant. It was a win.
It was
a clear
only
win.
like 53%. Which is alarming because at the beginning of the year, we were polling at 78% before the church came out.
Oh, wow.
And the church did their propaganda and we passed with 53%. Now, we were always going to lose a chunk.
Sure.
You always do when it gets down to the nitty-gritty. People are in that polling booth, figuratively.
Or don't show up at all.
Mailbox.
Yeah.
Right.
They don't. It's great to push.
I was a resident of Idaho, but I would have voted if I could. Oh. Like I didn't even get to vote
Now,
on it. but
Idaho has got stuff going on, sir. You need to be watching what's happening in Idaho.
I will.
But the whole thing that's really upsetting is that the initiative process is being shot down. So Prop 2, medical cannabis, was the first initiative to kind of get the axe. So a month after it passed, December 1st, that law became legal. On December 3rd, which was the first official business day, which was a Monday, they held a special session and they replaced and repealed the people's voice.
Can you talk about what was in that special session and what the compromise
Mike's
actually
doing finger quotes
Yeah.
because we were
Because
already
it's
scolded
not a-
for using the word compromise.
Well, it's not a
Replacement.
compromise because if you look at what is in there, it pretty much
Well, it's
makes
never a
it where
compromise when
it's
it's being
never going to
dictated by the
happen.
government.
Yeah. So
And many like to say, well, it has 80% of what the other bill had. This is disingenuous.
Yeah, they just mean in
because
word count, that's
in
it.
word, in word count, it is off the hook. It is 200 pages long.
it
Our
grew. It was like
bill
136
was
when I
27. Oh, that was the first version.
Yeah.
They went through 4 versions before we
Wow.
actually voted. So the Prop 2 was 27 pages long. This new version of things was 200 pages long of just legalese garbage. It was so contradicting. They like to say that it has 80% of what Prop 2 has. Just because a bill says that it has cannabis in it and that you can access it and then you're going to have these cards and everything else, that every state has 80% of the same language.
Yeah. Right.
That's very disingenuous into what
Yeah, it
is
means almost
actually
nothing.
going on. You need to pay attention to that 20% because what that 20% is this.
Well, yeah,
It allows the state to become a drug cartel.
Yep.
They are dispensing medical cannabis through our health departments. I need to remind your audience again, this is a Schedule I substance. It's federally illegal. The state is compelling their state employees to break federal law by running cannabis through the health department. The health department is going to have to revamp itself to be accommodating of a cash business and dispensing illegal substance, which means they have to go through money, and it's a $4 million price tag is where they're looking at to revamp these said health departments. Again, let me remind your audience, the health departments get 75% of their federal funding from the federal government.
Yeah.
That's their funding has come from the federal
Yeah,
government.
the feds are not going to be stoked about
They are
this.
not going to be happy about this. So now, for a moment, think about this. These are the prohibitionists that came up with the compromise. Do you think that they want this program to be up and operational?
no.
Well,
You
no,
put
I mean, they
something
basically
like
put a
this
giant
in,
roadblock in front of it.
Absolutely. But my ally who jumped ship says, oh, but, they were going to destroy the program anyway. And this way we've got something. Now we have less dispensaries and the state's going to come in here and they're going to, tweak things around a little bit and we'll have
Well,
better
it's going to
access.
be like the state-run liquor and
Not
that-
even that, because it's federally illegal.
Right.
yeah.
That's the frustrating thing. So, the state is basically giving the federal government the finger. So, what is the federal government supposed to do? What are they
Yeah.
going to do?
Well, they can either come in and
crack down.
crack down on everything,
Or-
they can withhold funding.
Withhold funding? I think they're under the illusion that it's going to force rescheduling. That's not going to force rescheduling. There is so much complexity to what's going on for rescheduling on an international and national level. Utah being foolish is not going to push the envelope. And so my concern and my frustration the whole time is these are roadblocks. This is delay tactics.
Well, it's like you
And
talked about
even
earlier.
Even if it does get implemented somehow, and so we don't do central fill. Say we take central fill out. That's one of the things we're
Yep.
suing on. Say we take that out. We now only have 7 dispensaries that are going to service 3.1 million people in Utah.
Yeah.
Granted, not all those people are going to be patients wanting to use cannabis. Let's pop that number down to 50,000 people. 50,000 people across the state of Utah for 7 stores? Are
Yeah.
you kidding me?
Yeah.
The Great Compromise took away our access. We
Well-
could at least have 1 dispensary for every 150,000 people. That was like 6 dispensaries in Salt Lake
Lake,
alone. What they did was limit access. This is not a patient-focused bill. They have limited their licensing. This is purely industry and profit. So I'm absolutely against HB 3001.
So
There's more to it, though.
There's more to it. One of the requirements is you have to have an existing doctor-patient relationship, and the doctors don't want to.
Take on a cannabis
They don't
patient.
want to do it, and they limit to 20% of their patients.
Oh,
can
it's
be-
less than that. Well, that was in Proposition 2. It was, 20%. Now there's an actual hard number. You can only have 175 patients Or if you're a specialist, 300 patients. So if you're an oncologist, all your patients are cancer patients.
Right.
All your
All
patients
could
are
probably benefit from
all
THC.
could benefit, but you could only pick 300 of your patients that you can recommend to. We find that egregious.
Yeah.
Well,
That
yeah.
is
I mean-
completely inappropriate. A doctor should not have to lottery out recommendations.
Yeah,
That's
no.
inappropriate.
Well, and this shouldn't even be on a doctor's mind. He should be able to offer the best treatment for his patient,
Agreed.
period, whatever
Agreed.
it is. And, you know,
Well,
whatever
even-
he has access to anyway. And by limiting it like that, he is going to have to pick favorites. He's going to pick,
Yeah.
you know, who is most
I
deserving in
believe
this
you,
moment
yeah.
and, you know, that kind of thing. And that's a judgment that we don't need doctors making.
We don't. Also, in our legislation, they're putting doctors in a very tough spot. They're making them write dosing parameters. It's federally illegal for a doctor to write or prescribe cannabis. Again, it's a Schedule I substance. So a doctor cannot, based on some court cases, they cannot, versus Walters, I believe it is, they cannot recommend a dosing parameters. That is stipulated in our bill. It has to happen. If your doctor doesn't do it, the pharmacist does, where you're going and getting it.
That
Have you ever
makes me
walked
laugh
into
too,
a
right?
pharmacist
That's
and
who I
say,
want
hey,
telling
listen,
me how
I
much
think
of
I have
anything I
strep
should
throat.
take.
Can you write me a script? Can you just give me something from back there? That's not how our
Right.
world even
No.
functions now. Why on earth are you creating this whole other system? No other state is working like this.
They're also making the patients go through background checks.
I think they pulled that one out. They did. They
Okay.
were, in one of the versions, they were making all patients go through background checks. And I'm like,
And multiple times. So if they
It was
their
ridiculous.
script would go 90 days or something, and then they'd have to go through another background check.
Yeah.
It just
some of that's gone now, which it was a lot of patients pushing back, saying this is, but this is what happens when you compromise with people who are opposing you. You are legislating to their fears and not to reality.
Yeah.
And that's what HB 3001 is legislating to fears and not the reality of what's happening in the state or what could happen in the state. So,
Well, and, you know, I mean, it sounds too, I mean, if at the end of the day, it's all still federally illegal anyway, then, I mean, does that make everybody kind of along the sort of along the path, like all the doctors, and if they did prescribe, now they're culpable and they're sort of
can lose their
federally
license.
and so, I mean, so
Would you-
what's, why would you risk that ever?
Exactly.
You know,
That's
and
what we're
so-
saying. But for whatever reason, legislators just seem to think like, this is fine. This is fine. And I'm confused by it. I'm so confused by it that I contacted Rocky Anderson. And I said, Rocky, we've got to sue the state. We've got to sue the state. This is ridiculous.
He's your lawyer, right?
He's our attorney.
Isn't he a senator as well, or doesn't
No,
he?
he was the Salt Lake City mayor
Okay.
for a while, but no, he's just an attorney. In fact, it was Senator Mark Madsen who told me you probably need to reach out to Rocky, because I was growing concerned as the campaign progressed that we were going to be hitting some roadblocks like this, that the state was going to be pulling some shifty stuff. The church, when I met with them, had told me that they were going to be pumping out $5 to $10 million against us. And they wanted to, they told me war is coming. And they were quite right. It really was. But we still stood there. I had everybody sort of jump ship. My allies left. The patients still stood. I look at it this way, the powers that be in the state came and we were playing chicken, and my allies flinched, and we're still standing. Patients are still standing on the ideology that access is far more important than the stuff that the state's trying to do by doing their own personal drug cartel. It's just the strangest thing. Of all states, you would not think Utah would want to be running a drug cartel.
Yeah. But I mean, back to Mike's
DABC.
analogy earlier about
Absolutely.
alcohol. I mean, it's policed hard here. I mean, you can only buy it in state-run liquor stores, and all the way down to beer and High Point beer and then wine.
Yeah.
I remember right after we moved to Utah, one of the first things we did, we needed cooking sherry for a recipe, and we couldn't find it at the grocery store to save our life. And finally, somebody told us, no. If you need cooking sherry, they got it at the liquor store. You go over to the liquor store and you get your cooking sherry. And I was like, nobody in the world will drink cooking sherry. Like, it will kill you. You'll just hate it, and it's the worst.
It's so
and so it's
salty.
like, who's looking to drink that? But we still can't carry it in the store. It
It's
had
a
too much.
nanny state.
Yeah, it had too much alcohol content.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a thing.
So we push on. We are doing the lawsuit. I don't think anybody is stopping the efforts. Even my allied who jumped shit is
Jumped
ship is frustrated too.
Sure.
He's not happy with where things are, and he's getting beat up by advocates who are frustrated. They feel like he betrayed us.
Well, I
So-
think that's the problem, right? When you take sort of the political route or sort of the soft belly
And that's-
version of that, where
Well, there was only
you stand
two ways to
strong until
go.
you're confronted, and then it's like,
Right.
well, wait, I'm a politician. I got to make politics work for
Right.
a while. I can't just,
He's a policy
I can't hang my
wonk,
hat on
and I'm
this.
an activist.
Yeah.
So when you look at our hats and our roles as being allies together, you can understand why he chose the path he
Yeah.
chose and I chose the path I chose.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that's the only saving grace is that you can understand his behavior based on what it is he's doing.
Agreed. I don't agree with it.
Yeah, it may not
but
be
I
right, but you can at
yeah.
least understand why he did it.
Right.
And so, but I guess knowing that and going forward, it might be better not to take on that kind of ally, even though unfortunately we kind of need him. So-
that as well as becoming more politically engaged. So now our efforts, TRUCE is always going to be focused on medical cannabis and stuff, but we also want to educate our patients and our caregivers who follow us and our members how to be politically engaged. So we're moving on teaching them the electoral process, how to watch candidates and what candidates are supportive of your cause and how to engage with them, because we do have a hostile legislative body to this issue. And not just this issue,
I would
Medicaid
imagine any issue
expansion.
that suits.
Medicaid expansion got chopped up during this session this year, just recently, the regular session. And while I was on the Hill during that, I heard very loudly that Prop 4, which is the gerrymandering, is going to be next in special session. So if I could counsel anybody, even if they're in Utah or outside of this state, you need to become politically engaged in what's happening.
How do you do that? Because I'm not we avoid politics on this show. And to be honest with you,
This is a long hour.
right? Our show is based on a creativity podcast. He's a graphic designer. I'm a DJ. We talk to people and we get the eggs. We pull the eggs of your career out and we talk about what sets you apart from other designers or this and that. We avoid politics because I'm not knowledgeable about it. This is a passion thing for me because, like I said,
You
I
have
have
family
I
and
have
friends.
friends that are
Yeah.
dealing with it, and so that's why I reached out to you and wanted to bring you on the show because I've heard your story and I relate to it, and so we're kind of taking a sidetrack and going down a political
I don't
road.
think it's too far. I mean, the political piece is definitely more political than we've ever done, but the current I think is the same. So like Mike's saying, we look at all these different people and sort of their creative process or whatever. But what we've identified in the show is that the juice that one person turns into a business and another person turns into an art career, you're turning into, advocacy.
Absolutely.
And so I think it's actually right on point, while it's being maybe a little more political or a little bit more, church bashy than we typically are. I think that the core of what's happening is the same. And it's this idea, because we've really gone down this path with you. It began with all these problems you had and now it's moved all the way into legislature, which is, trying to handle this the right way. You're not trying to figure out how to have the most successful, pot dealership out of the back of your van or something. You're really going through the hoops. You're trying to make this work. And so despite being a little bit, politically motivated, and obviously there'll be people who sort of fall on both sides of the debate, honestly, I think at this point, it seems like most people are kind of just coming online, and they're understanding not even if they're, I think a lot of people, me personally, I'm not particularly into marijuana. I've had it a few times. The feeling I get from it isn't something that makes me go, okay, I need this. And, and I'm obviously not trying to chase down a migraine or whatever other problem.
a health
So for me,
condition.
recreationally or whatever, I'm just not that passionate about it,
Right.
because for me, I haven't needed that just yet.
Right.
But I can empathize as a parent, or if I was in the position where my child was having migraines or whatever, or seizures or some serious problem and needed some treatment, I think I would go right to medical cannabis before jumping into pills or any of this other stuff. And not because I'm some shaman or because I'm so good and so have things figured out right. But, we've talked about it a little bit, but it's sometimes nature knows best.
Yeah.
And if you could just, have a little bit of marijuana and be golden versus taking your
Heavy
battery of
pharmaceuticals.
12 pills
Can we-
I think it's the way to go.
I know we're going long and a lot longer than we normally do, but I want to discuss Landon.
Sure.
Because he just brought that up. His Landon's story is a very tear-jerking story for me. was it cancer that he had?
He had cancer, yeah.
Okay. I heard his mom talk and tell the story about how they were giving him all the opioids, or giving him all this, and the drugs were essentially killing him.
Yep.
And she made the decision to go and try marijuana.
She had to flee the state.
She fled the state. She moved to Oregon. And they actually
moved
went
to Colorado first, I think, and then moved to Oregon. But yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What I wanted to highlight with this was the cost of his medical care before she decided to switch, and how much debt their family took on just trying to treat him with what the state was requiring and what they were making them do. I think they ended up $500,000 for just over a year of treatment, or under a year of treatment. His grandma still paying it off, if I remember correctly. They left the state. Marijuana helped significantly. He was able to. He was up running around on stage, and just looked like a normal, healthy kid. But the whole time he's running around on stage, I'm seeing pictures of him comatose, just knocked out, just like near death's door. And they were able to change his life and his outcome with marijuana and the medicinal value of it. And when they initially moved, they actually went to battle with the state because they were trying to take him away from her and put him back into chemo and back into the system that was killing him. And the state was gonna mandate that. And they had already found a solution that was working for him. And they were gonna take him away and put him in this foster care and put him in the hospital again. That just seems asinine to me.
Well,
that just seems...
Yeah, I think maybe to sort of, I mean, bring that back into all the things we've been talking about, the fact that their family even has to go through all that, I mean, the fact that some possible alternative is being withheld because of some legal thing or whatever.
Or political.
I think is all the more reason that people need to become politically active and start actually paying attention to these things. I mean, learn from our kinfolk back in 1937 that voted against their best interest to get rid of cannabis in the first place.
Well, that was by a closed door kind of thing. That wasn't even like
It wasn't. It was done pretty sneakily.
Yeah.
And so, but with relative support because people didn't know what they were talking about.
Right.
And so I think, I think that's a great point that, if we're trying to pull a few things out of this show that are really important, I think that's one of them. Yeah. I think, I guess being open and understanding that people should be allowed access to different things. I'm not necessarily... I don't know. I probably am more leaning towards the type of guy who would just say sort of, legalize everything and let chips fall where they may, and especially now there's a lot of research around addiction and things where they're finding it has a lot more to do with happiness than it does to do with the chemical compounds.
It has to do with connection.
And, so, I mean, a lot of these problems that we're, attributing to heroin or some of these other things, it's not the heroin. The heroin is what's killing the problem. The problem is I'm miserable, I'm unhappy, I hurt, whatever it is. And they're finding a lot more evidence to support that, where the longly held ideas were that it was, sort of chemical dependency. And so I think it's really important that we start to have kind of an open mind about all this stuff. And, and I think it's getting easier. But, I mean, when you hear stories like this one, it's just... I mean, it's maddening as a parent, and to feel so powerless, I can't even imagine how horrible that must feel. And so, but then when your government is sort of actively working against you, when you do make a step in the right direction, and then they just take a dump on it as soon as it goes through the doors, I don't know, it makes you feel really powerless. And so I think like maybe the moral of the story is you have to get involved. You have to understand what's happening in your world. You do.
And there's John F. Kennedy saying that's, one person can make a difference and everyone should try. And that's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. And every advocate that I meet that joins this group is that one person raising their voice. And that's how a movement happens. That's how this change across the country is happening. That's why we have 47 states with some sort of legislation in place. There's people who are standing up and saying enough is enough.
Yeah.
Kind of amazing time, honestly. We look back at this and everybody thinks the 60s was this revolutionary time of, we're living it right now.
I think the age of the internet is a lot to do with that, because the knowledge is there. People, all they have to do is look it up and find out for themselves. Don't take someone else's word for it. Don't take the person who's telling you from a pulpit saying this is bad. Go and do the research.
Yes.
In
all things.
Yeah, everything. So I guess
I guess so. For parting shots.
Yeah.
How can people get involved, maybe with TRUCE or just in sort of advocacy in general? Like, where can people find more information about you, about TRUCE, and so on?
TRUCE, we're all on social media. We do have a website, truceutah.org is our website. We're still adding new content to that. We've kind of been resting over there because we've been in the middle of the campaign. But we're also on Facebook. Every morning we have a blog up, and we're always...
You're one of the people on the panel updates that all the time for you every day.
Maynard.
Yep. I listened to him on that family night panel, and his story's good as well.
He's amazing. He's absolutely amazing. 35 years in a social worker, licensed clinical social worker, practiced out of New York, and he's one of our key researchers. We try really hard on Facebook, especially on to give people a download every day of information. If you follow us and read our blog every day, you're going to learn a lot about the cannabis, the plant itself, but also about the policy works that are going on across the country. Every state is doing things, and there's lessons to be learned there. So follow us on Facebook at TRUCE Utah. Also, we're on Instagram and Twitter. Same thing, TRUCE Utah.
And at truceutah.org, you can donate to the cause. You can, I guess, can you become a member? Can you support?
We don't have a membership yet, but you can donate. We don't have memberships yet. We are wanting to start branching out. I mean, it's just a nonprofit that started from scratch just 2 years ago. But now there's a demand for us to sort of be across the state. We've had other states even reach out to us saying, we love what you guys do. We'd like to become a chapter.
Awesome.
So we're looking into that kind
That's
of stuff.
great. Well, and they also have some merchandise and things like that you can all buy to support the cause and just kind of spread the good word.
Yep.
So I guess, unless there's anything else, Christine, anything else you'd like to say before we split?
Oh, stay engaged.
All right.
Gotta stay engaged.
I love it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for your time. And, thanks to everybody who tuned in this week. This was maybe, a different path than we've done a lot of. And so I think it's pretty exciting to see, or it will be exciting to see what our listeners think of it. And I'm really grateful for having you come. So it was awesome.
Thank you so much.
And cool to understand some of this stuff. So
I appreciate you having me on, gentlemen. Thank you so much.